So sometimes selecting a topic to preach on can be more complicated than it seems. I recently got an email from a subscriber asking about this exact topic, and here's what they said. My biggest frustration with preaching and preparing is finding topics to build sermons around. I think this will become more difficult once I start building sermon series. Either way, it's something I'm praying about, and I know God will guide me with this. So I want to address this question, and I get this often in different forms, but how do you select a topic for a given sermon? How do you select a topic for a sermon series? How do you make sure that you have a good set of things to preach on for a given year? Let's dive into that in this video. My name's Lane. This is Preaching Donkey. It's so awesome to have you joining me today. I want to point you towards my free 21-day guide to creating killer sermons. You can get it at preachingdonkey.com/21 days. It's a quick 3-step process that will just walk you through a way of preparing and delivering sermons that I think will set you up for success. Whether you've been preaching for a long time or you're brand new to preaching, there's something in that for you. So definitely check that out at preachingdonkey.com/21 days, or you can pick up the link right here. So as I attempt to answer the question of how do you select topics to preach on, there's a couple of things I want to point out. One, everybody's situation is different. For example, if you're the lead pastor of your church, then when you select a topic for a sermon, it fits into your broader picture of everything that you're preaching on for that year or for that set of years, for that month. And so your considerations are going to be much different than the person who is asked to preach to fill in for a pastor, and they're told, preach on whatever you want. Most of us have been in that situation where somebody says, I want you to preach, or you get a spot to guest speak somewhere, and they say, hey, it's up to you. Preach on whatever you would like to. In that situation, I want to speak to how to select a topic to preach on first. I also want to speak to those of you who maybe are the lead pastor or the senior pastor, and it is your choice what you preach on for a given year. So the first and simplest way to select a topic, and this is particularly for situations where it may just be one-off sermons that you're just asked to preach, and that is, what is God showing you? What is God showing you? What have you been reading in your daily time with Him and the Word? What is God showing you in your heart? What are you seeing in the people that you're leading? What has God placed on your heart, and how could that be of benefit to your people? Now, if it's a sermon, it's different than a devotional. So the one thing that you have to kind of realize is that if you've had some devotional thoughts and things that God has shown you, you still need to make those into a sermon that's actionable, that's clear, that's life-changing, that has application, has illustration, has points. All that stuff needs to be there if it's going to be a legitimate sermon. But it can begin with the question of, what is God showing me? How is He speaking to me? How is He speaking to the people that I'm leading? How is He speaking to the people that I'm around? How is He working and moving in my life? Totally fine to start there. And one of the ways that you can do that is to look at maybe what He's showing you currently, or what has He brought you through this past year, or this past couple of years, or this last decade. Maybe if you have an opportunity to preach, it could be just as simple as drawing from experience that you've had in your relationship with Jesus. Obviously, your sermons need to be derivative from the scripture. So you can't just say, here's my experience and here's what God did. Let's close in prayer. Go do likewise. I mean, it needs to be biblical, and you need to walk people through a text of scripture. So all that stuff needs to be there. But what I'm saying is, it can come from a place that's deep down inside of you that God has shown you. The next two areas that I want to talk about selecting topics for preaching apply more to you if you are the lead pastor or kind of primary content developer, primary sermon content developer in your church. What you want to do is look at the calendar and think in terms of two types of sermon series that you can have throughout the year: expansion and equipping. Expansion series are just a way of thinking about the kind of series that have a very broad reach, okay? Maybe there's series that are based on felt needs. Maybe you walk through a New Testament letter like 1 John or James, or something that's very practical and applicable. It's something that In this series, it's very easy to ask your people to invite their friends to because you know that it's an expansion series, meaning that your church will likely grow during this series as it's going to attract new people. Maybe you're dealing with finances, or maybe you're dealing with sexual integrity, or maybe you're dealing with racial injustice. Whatever the case may be, it might be a felt need, it might be somewhat controversial, maybe you're responding to questions. Could be any number of things that you're doing in an expansion series, but you want to look at your calendar and you want to think about what are the times during the year where people are more likely to be coming back to church, or you're going to have the biggest audience. And there's really three primary times that you want to capitalize for expansion series. The first time is when people go back to school, so that's August or September, depending on what region you're in. But even then, if your kids go back to school in August, people are going to be looking for churches as early as like late July. If your kids go back to school in September, people are going to be looking for churches in August. So just keep that in mind. But definitely the fall, before school starts and when school starts, you've got a huge opportunity to do expansion series. The second time is in January when everybody's coming back. It's a great time to do kind of new beginnings type series and fresh start type series. And then the third time is right after Easter, because you're going to have the biggest crowd ever on Easter, and that is a great time to kick off a new series, or to say next week we're going to kick off a new series. Those are great times during the year to plan out when can I do a series that has a very broad appeal, very applicable, and touches on felt needs. The second type of series you want to do is equipping. Now, equipping is more for the body. It's more for equipping the saints for the work of ministry, like Ephesians 4 says. It's more for people who are regulars, who are tied into your church, who kind of like they get it, they're your core. And so you want to do equipping series maybe when you have a little bit of a lag in attendance, because you know that you're going to have your core, most committed people there. This might be during the winter or during the dead of summer, different times during the year that you can kind of fill in with equipping. Really great things to do during equipping series are maybe deep dives into Old Testament figures. It could be deep dives into New Testament letters. It could be a walk through one of the Gospels. It could be a walk through Acts or one of the epistles. I mean, it could be any number of things where you take some weeks and you really go deep to equip your people. So if you think about expansion and equipping, and you put those two things together and you look at the calendar, that's a really great way to determine what to preach on. And then finally, the third thing, and this applies again to lead pastors, is you want to make sure that you're providing your people with a balanced diet. You have a variety of spiritual food. If you think about it, if you were to only eat meat and nothing else, no fats, no greens, no veggies, no fruits, no nothing, just meat, you would have a lot of protein, but you'd be lacking maybe in something else. Or if you ate nothing but M&Ms, you would be lacking in a lot, right? Because M&Ms are not a sufficient diet. So what we want to think about in our churches is how can we make sure that people have a broad and balanced diet within, say, a given year or a given 2 years. Not that the church is the only spiritual food that people get. They should be equipped to be self-feeders. But as pastors, we definitely want to provide a balanced diet. So one way to do this is to balance between Old Testament and New Testament. I know I tend to just really gravitate towards New Testament letters. I love the writings of Paul and the other New Testament authors, and I tend to really gravitate towards teaching those. And I have to really force myself to teach Old Testament. Maybe you're the opposite, but it's good to have a balance. It's also good to have a balance between life application and deep study. And again, if you go back to equipping and expansion, those balances are worked in. And so you want to make sure that your people have a balanced diet. You want to make sure that you're looking at the calendar and you're trying to figure out when can we expand and when can we equip. And then at the end of the day, you really want these to be derived, whether you're a lead pastor or you've just been given a chance to preach one-off. You want these things to be derived not just from the scriptures, but also from a place where God has been speaking to you. It's so much better and so much deeper and so much more powerful when it comes from a place inside. In this playlist right here, I have more to say about sermon preparation. I would love it if you subscribe to this channel. We're almost at 5,000 subs, which is huge. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Give this video a like. Let me know in the comments what you think about sermon topics and how you select yours, and I will see you in the next video.